Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast. This is a weekly program focused on the relevant topics in Freemasonry and the various aspects of the craft. Any opinions, thoughts, or viewpoints shared during this program are that of the individual and do not reflect the position of any Grand Lodge, appendant, or concordant body from which that member may hail. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, Editor-in-Chief of CraftsmanOnline.com, and on this episode, we gather to answer one of the larger questions in Freemasonry: why be a master? And we reached out to a very experienced guest, Worshipful Brother Luis Gonzalez, who's the past master of Odenton Lodge number 209 in Odenton, Maryland. Welcome back to the podcast, brother.
Great to be back, Brother Arce. This is one of my favorite things. I've become a huge fan of your podcast, by the way, so glad to be back.
Thank you. Well, I'm not allowed to have favorites, but you do have a charisma and energy and excitement level that you bring in any conversation. Of course, Luis was featured as one of our top podcasts for 2021 when we talked about his passion for the craft. And I have no doubt that we're going to have a great conversation as we kind of get into this. It to me is always the top chair in a Masonic Lodge, and that is the chair and the title of being a Worshipful Master. I want to get to that first time when you walked into a lodge room and your impression of seeing the Worshipful Master, whether it's the guy who gets to wear the top hat or who sits in the big fancy ornate chair in lodge. What were you thinking when you saw that?
So as soon as my eyes went from darkness to light, right, and the blinds were taken off and my vision cleared, man, and I see this guy and he's in a tuxedo and he's got this top hat on and he's approaching me and everybody just seems to be paying attention. And I'm looking around. I was like, oh man, I'm back in. I felt like I was transported to, Victorian time period. And I'm in the presence of a king. Right. And everybody's just looking. And then behind them, I see the chair, and it's obviously elevated. And I didn't know what, the steps meant or anything, but it was everything that I kind of imagined, but different, if that makes sense, right? Like, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't read prior, but I see this man and everybody's just paying attention and he's there educating me and I'm trying to process what he's saying. But I'm more in awe with the jewels, the apron, the way he's approaching me in a unique way, right? And the throne behind him and everybody, he does a certain, gesture with his body and everybody follows suit. And then the moment he hit the gavel for the first time and everybody just sat down, it was pretty impressive. And I'll never forget, that was past master Tom Keller, right? So he was actually about to become master, but he actually did my initiation.
It's a very similar experience, except the first time I saw the master of a lodge, they did an open, program that we could come into as just interested gentlemen in the craft. And I remember walking in and it was the first time seeing everything, like, okay, there's all these decorations and the guys are actually doing it. They're wearing these aprons I've heard about, and seen. And then bang, here's this guy that's standing up and he's got this, old school, banging kind of mallet gavel. And he's got a top hat on. And just like you said, like everybody listened to him. Everybody gave him ultimate respect. And I'm like, he is very important in this room. But this is the same guy literally downstairs. We were just talking at dinner and just casual conversation over drink, like total normal guy. I'm like, my first thought was, why and how do I get in that chair? Like, I want to be there someday. That's what caught my eye. I'm guessing you probably had something similar as you got into being a Master Mason.
Yeah, I mean, and it was interesting because to go what you just said, he was just a normal guy, right? So for me, the first impression was that, and then next thing you know, we're downstairs, and I find out the guy, is a baker by profession, super down to earth. And all of a sudden, we're all the same, right? And that was like my first introduction. Like, wow, this guy carries a lot of weight, but yet he's here, just one of the guys. And, they can turn it on. Right. So at that moment I said, I, like I said in my previous podcast, I take Masonry very serious. Right. So if I'm going to join something, I want to give 100%. So I asked him, I said, I'm really thoroughly impressed. So how do I start becoming involved? And the man told me, you need to show up to every practice before we can even talk about that. So I started showing up. And for Odenton, it's Wednesdays, right? So we meet the first and third. So the second and fourth, we hold practice, and I would just go there and see. And I said, one day, if I'm worthy and I feel like I can contribute, then maybe I'll go to the East, right? But I never looked at it like I want to be in the East or I want to be in Masonry to, to become a master. But I said, if I want to get there, if when I feel the moment is right and I can give it all, my all. But I knew that somewhere in the back of my mind, if there ever came a time where the brothers found it worthy and I felt like I can make a difference, that I wanted to do that, right? And I like in that past master, right, and the way he conducted business and he took Masonry seriously, I guess kind of formed my mentality of what Masonry.
You're going to hear, if you're a new member of the craft or you're just kind of interested in Freemasonry, we're going to use some terms tonight. So I'm going to kind of point out some things. First of all, Worshipful Master is basically like the president of the lodge, for lack of a better term. The title Worshipful, and I just wish that they could see the look on your face for tonight, it's out of respect. We don't worship, Brother Luis.
Right. So that was actually when they were like Worshipful Master, I'm like, wait, that guy's a man like me. What do you mean I worship this dude? I worship a guy.
Right.
And then, but it quickly dawned on me, okay, this is just a term of respect, right? It's like we call him Mr. President, right? We will just never call somebody, by their first name or their last name, especially the president or the vice president or whoever, right? Somebody in a position of authority, right? Like Queen Elizabeth is always the queen. She's not my queen, right? But I'm still going to call her Queen Elizabeth and her Royal Highness just out of respect to her position, right? But at first I was like, worshipful. What do you mean I'm worshiping and in there? So that was interesting.
And the Worshipful Master sits in the eastern part of the lodge in a chair, and you'll hear us refer to other directions on a compass, and that just relates to where the other officers, the wardens, may sit, because we're going to make reference, I'm sure, several times tonight, what's either called the road to the east or the path to the east or just looking towards the east, which would be a Mason's progression to becoming the master of their lodge. For me, I think the question, why be a master, it kind of has twofold. The first one is, why would I want to do this? It's not like you can just instantly join Freemasonry. You get your card, you're a dues paying member. No, there's a lot of work that goes into becoming a Master Mason. And then on top of that, you're looking for an investment of years before you can even dream of becoming the Worshipful Master. Give us some background on your experience. What was your path to the East?
So I was raised in 2005, right? And like I said, I was attending the practices, and I started off as a steward, right? So I became the senior steward, and we say that there's progressive lines, but I have my own thoughts on what a progressive line really is, because obviously there are some positions that are appointed and some positions that are elected, and if a position's elected, then it's really not progressive because you got to get elected to it, right? But anyway, so I started off as a steward, and long story short, I deployed, left for a while, came back, and I went through every chair. In Maryland, you have to exemplify, right? So the first time I actually exemplified in the first and second degree, and started in the third, was in 2014, actually. And then life, again, deployed, turned down the nomination, right? And I wasn't actually an officer at the time. And then came back, let's see, so in 2019, came back. I had given my promise and my word to past Master Adams, right? Kenneth Adams, that if he ever was elected to the East, I would absolutely support him, and I wanted to see that. And I wasn't able to do that for his first term in 2018, right? I was still work and school. So in 2019, he put out a call, said, hey, need help. And I said, oh my God, the stars aligned, right? My everything opened up, and I came back and I said, hey man, I'll support you anytime. I gave you my word many years ago. And it would be a pleasure. And he said, oh, wait, you don't mind being a steward? Like, cause they're looking at me like, you've been warden, you've been this, you've exam. I said, man, it's not about titles, right? To me, I give you my word, and I want to contribute. So started there, supporting past Master Adams, and then was elected to become senior warden in 2020, right? So was senior warden in 2020. And then was fortunate enough to be elected to the East in this year, 2021. Obviously, you got challenging years, right? You got 2020 pandemic, 2021 pandemic, and look, 2022, we're still in their pandemic. But hopefully we're things will get better. So anyway, that was my journey to the East, right? I've been a master Mason for about 16 and a half years now. And the way I always looked at it, like I said, I've turned down positions. And it was just the right time, right? I felt like I could give it 100%, full dedication. And because I was able to do that, I said, okay. And I took down the what I call the seat of servitude, right? I don't see the worshipful master position as a position like I'm in power or no, I look at the master as the servant of the lodge, right? And I can get into all kinds of theological analogies and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm there to serve the brothers, right? They don't serve me, right? And that's what I think people lose of that chair. They think of it as you're the boss, you're the king now, right? Wrong. Right? Actually, that's the chair of burden, in my opinion, right? That's the chair where you serve them and you're there at the will and pleasure of your brothers that elected you to the highest position within that lodge, right? So I always came at that chair with I'm there to serve them and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give it 100%. And to do what's right for them. And, and then we can get into, what it takes to be a leader. And sometimes you're not going to make everybody happy, but I look at it from a servitude perspective as opposed to I rule perspective.
Let's not depress them just yet. There is still some joy here. But I just have to say, just to surmise your history, is you're the youngest Mason I know that spent the most amount of time on a path to become Worshipful Master. And I'm glad that you got to have that experience. And as you mentioned, the stars almost have to line up for these opportunities. And it's just one of those things that as Master Masons, we become more aware of when an opportunity presents itself, especially one to contribute to the lodge. So a big question is, why be a master of the lodge? Well, you're going to have to make some dedication. You're going to have to make commitment to getting in line at some point and becoming an officer. So that means you're going to have to learn your ritual, but you're also going to have to start developing those very important relationships with other brothers, especially the brothers who are going to be in your officer line that will be most importantly your peers, but also those that'll be eventually working underneath you to support you when it's your year. Mm-hmm. So there is, and I don't want to, get too much into it, but there is some sort of the politics that comes in and being able to manage those relationships that you're going to have with other men that sometimes you only see once, maybe twice a month. That's it.
Correct. Yeah.
Other guys you might have a better relationship with, but it's not something that you can just walk in and get right off the rip. And as you mentioned, in each jurisdiction, there are different requirements to becoming the Worshipful Master. For example, in my home jurisdiction, New York State, we have two programs. There's the Road to the East and the 24-inch gauge, where you learn the principles of basic lodge management, but also leadership so that you can be better enabled and better prepared to serve a lodge. I know from brothers that I've talked to in the past that maybe didn't have a business background or a military background or a management background or at that level of education through school or secondary education, that when they got to the East, this was the first time that they had to make a budget. This was the first time they had to create a schedule. This was the first time they had to manage men who were their peers because they really had only had their kids or maybe their family that they were managing at that point. What were some of the things that you observed during your time in the East that you were prepared for, or also those things that kind of took you by surprise that were learning moments?
Everything that you said, especially those, like I call them business skills, right? But there's also soft skills, right? The networking, the being able to, I find it, change management, motivation, right? Motivating the people under you as well as the membership. And then the business aspect, I found, that was to me was second nature, right? So my background is in business, right? So I got an MBA in business, in business management. I do Lean Six Sigma, stats, so budgeting, finance, how to run an organization. It was my first time, and also I come from a military background as well as a Marine, so platoon sergeant, platoon leadership, right? So that was I found natural, right? What completely shocked me is dealing with the different level of personalities, right? And especially past masters that come out of the woodwork, right? And then realizing that this is a volunteer organization at the end of the day, right? Um, it's not like the military or in a job where, they get paid a salary and you're the boss. And, if they don't like it, you write their fitness report or their evaluation and you can fire them, right? That's not how this works. So understanding for me, the learning thing was, I'm a pretty straight to the point, pretty rough. What you see is what you get. I speak from the heart. But then having to taper back and realizing, okay, I got to use what I call tradecraft, right? And my soft skills to motivate different people and see what they take. And I had to be a little bit more observant. I'm not the best at it, right? Because again, speak from the heart. I'm Latino fire, right? Like I'm gonna come at you and I'm gonna let you know, right? And to me, I take it to the heart, right? If we're a family and we're brothers, then you should be able to tell me how you feel, and I should be able to tell you how I feel, right? But just navigating different personalities and past masters and change management, right? Because my year was a lot of change, right? Turning around and continuing what had already started with past master Adams and for me, and then taking it to another level, right? But it required a change in mindset, and people are set in their ways. So I spent a lot of time behind the scenes figuring out, okay, what makes this particular individual tick, right? How can I motivate them to buy on the program, right? How can this person's upset, right? Because of X, Y, and Z. Well, how can I make them feel like they're still a valuable part of the team, right? And a contributor, but only in the aspects where it's their strong suits, right? So it was the personalities, right? That was, to me, was like, man, I didn't realize, I thought we were all, I'm going to be very blunt, we're all adults here, right? And I'm used to go, and you realize that some people are very sensitive, right? And then you're dealing with a wide range of age, right? From, people in their 80s to teens, right? Because in Maryland, we accept 18-year-olds, right? So early 20s, right? And of all different backgrounds. So that was one of the things that and obviously I asked for advice, right? Is just dealing with those different personalities. The business part, that to me came second nature. Like, I got to put a plan. This is how I'm going to do it. Here's the vision. Here's how I get people. But then it's the personalities, right? And you realize, wow, and then for me, it was like, we're all one. So there shouldn't be any cliques, right? So how do I break into this particular clique that maybe doesn't know me as well? I want them to see that I truly love the craft and I want what's best, even though they may not think so, and they may not agree 100% with the direction I'm trying to take it. I want them to know that it's coming from a good place, right? That when I make a decision that's not popular, right? Because maybe it's financial or right? It's not because out of spite, or it's not because I'm trying to, get more it's because it's the right thing and it's the business thing to do. And I have to worry about not just my year. I don't need to look good, right? I need to worry about the longevity, right? So 10 years from now, I want to make sure that Odenton Lodge is still there, right? Just like I inherited over 100 years later. My job is to protect that charter, right? So, and realizing that you're going to make decisions and let them understand that they're not going to agree all the time, but that it comes from that we all want what's best for the lodge, and it's coming from the heart, right? So
if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you've heard me talk about this concept before. I'm a big fan of it. I also think that it's alive and well, especially when you get to the leadership positions in Masonry, but it's the idea of servant leadership. 100%. And that's really the job of the master of the lodge.
Yep. No, 100% agree. And I think if you can approach the East, for any brother that's out there, right, that really thinks, if you're in it, like I said this right in front of the most worshipful Grand Master in Maryland, right? The very first visit is, at the end of the day, titles are nothing. Straight up. Your wife doesn't care that you're worshipful master or warden or whatever. Your friends don't care.
It's very true.
It holds no weight outside, right? It's what's in your heart, right? And are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you living up to those tenets? We're not perfect. I'm far from perfect, right? I understand I have a lot of flaws, right? But am I working to perfect to break that rough ashlar? And am I doing it for the right reasons, right? And if you're doing it because you have an ego, then me personally, you have no place in masonry, or at least in leadership position, and you got to work a little bit more on that, right? You got to do. You're a servant. You're there, especially as the master. You're there to serve your lodge and your brothers. Period.
I'll say this: one of my experiences, the first time I was junior warden for my mother lodge in Schenectady. I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this chair is grooming me to be master of the lodge. We did 2-year terms. So I'm like, okay, I'll be master of the lodge in 4 years. It doesn't seem like, a very short amount of time. And it goes by so quickly. And I just remember after my first year of being junior warden, I sat there and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do this, because this isn't just showing up and running meetings, making sure you create committees, that the degrees are happening, that the finances are in order. But there are so many after-hour commitments as brother passes away, Masonic funeral, you have to be there.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have a team prepared for that.
It's one of the most important things we'll ever do.
Oh, absolutely.
That respect out of everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Emergency happens at the lodge. There's a storm, there's a leaky roof, and now you get to deal with this problem. Other kinds of personal emergencies that can come up. Brothers that have to relocate because of their job or school or whatever the reason is. Now you're trying to fill, somebody's position. They have a family member that passed away on a degree night, and you're having to scan through your phone to call somebody to get to. And I watched the brother who was master of the lodge at the time, and I sat there, and it reminded me of the old saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah, 100%.
I thought, wow, you have such a giant target as master of the lodge. Why would you want that role if you're the center of attention and also sometimes the subject of criticism?
Oh, 100%. You are the subject of all criticism, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, right? And that's the burden of leadership, though, right? It's not for the accolades. No. It's as a leader, you're there for the good and the bad, right? And so yeah, it is heavy. I'll give you an example. When I say I give 100%, I mean I give 100%. So part of that was I spoke to my family, right? My wife and my daughter, and I said, listen, there's a good possibility that I might be nominated for the office, right?
I thought there's a good possibility I'm gonna have to go live at the lodge for 2 years. See ya.
Yeah. And I said, if I do and I accept it, then I don't do anything half blank, right? So I got to give it 100%, and it's going to be a lot of work. But that means, to me, all family vacations, if you want me to participate, you are going to work around the lodge's schedule. I will not miss anything in the lodge, because that means I might miss things for my daughter, or we skip it. And you got to understand that, right? I had to get buy-in. Luckily I have a very supportive wife, and been together forever, and she's never questioned me like, oh, why have you been there so long, or what? No, that's never come out of her mouth. So I'm lucky in that aspect, right? But I was very blunt. And so to prove this, my 20th wedding anniversary, I was opening lodge. That was it, because I gave my word. And as a servant, they entrusted me, and I lived true to my word, right? So on my 20th anniversary, I was in lodge. That was June 29th, and it was a Wednesday, right? And everybody's like, why didn't you take off? No, because for this year, the brothers, I'm the master. I got 2 arms, 2 legs. I'm breathing. I'm healthy. I'm going to be there. I can reschedule and celebrate the next time, but I gave my brothers my word, right? So obviously I'm a little extreme maybe, right? But everything, I reschedule everything, right? And part of the reason this year, for example, we have process to assume to the East, right? You got to do your leadership school, you got to do your law school, and then you got to do exemplification, 3 degrees, right? Part of the reason I made my my intentions that I could not do another year was because on my work front, I assumed another position, right? So because I don't know what the commitment of those hours will be, then I cannot with certainty tell my brothers and look them in the face and say, I can give you 100%. And if I can't give you 100%, then I won't assume that, right? And I was lucky that brother Adams was past master Adams was nominated and elected, right? And then that'll allow brother senior warden Seth, right? Which I cannot tell you how happy I will be when I see him become a master. That's going to be he's one of my best friends in the craft, right? So that he can do his exemplifications and stuff and assume the East if elected, right, by the brothers, hopefully next year. So I mean, I may take it a little bit to the extreme in the sense that I gave my word, so here we go, and it's 100% or nothing. To the point where, hey, I told my family from the very beginning, it's going to be a long year, so you either work around it or let me know now, and I could just decline, because then I can't give 100%, right? So
I'll share this with you, and there'll probably be a few others that get the deeper meanings here, but I found myself the second time that I went through to be junior warden of a lodge, that I was replaying the steps in our Masonic degrees. And by that, the first time I was the junior warden, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, I was prepared. I'm not going to say I blindly went into it. I spent years in the chairs below getting to that point.
Yeah.
But my mindset was, I was ready to just round first, second, and just steal third. I was looking for a triple. Bang. Yeah. I saw the home plate, and that was being a past master and getting to be in that elite group and they are the leaders of the lodge.
Yeah, they are.
But the second time I got in line, that's when I realized, okay, I'm supposed to sit here and learn, and I need to be looking at what my contribution is going to be by the time I get to the East. Like, how am I going to handle these situations? And how am I going to support the master of the lodge during his time so that there's, and I hate to use this term because it's been worn out in business, but so that there's synergy between the brothers in the line. And that's what I learned the second time going through the junior warden's chair and getting to be the senior warden, was that, as you had mentioned, like, your job's pretty much to sit there and watch. Then I started having a second part of the question of why be a master of the lodge. I started thinking about, okay, I need to start thinking about what my trestle board's going to be. And for those that are like, what's that? Basically your agenda, your plan, your platform for the year, right? What contributions am I going to commit to for myself on paper, get prepared for, knowing full well that random stuff is going to happen during the year that could put all of this into jeopardy. So as someone who has gone through that experience, in that second part of why be master of the lodge, what was it that you were looking to that was going to be your legacy, your gift to your lodge and your lodge brothers?
That's a good question, right? Like, I looked at it as, here is an opportunity that, okay, I could either sit there and complain internally, right, and externally at times, or I could give it 100% effort and see if I can make what my vision of masonry is, and what, based on the surveys, right, see if we can do that, right? And then more importantly, how can, my vision was, and it was written, I developed this infographic and everything, and it was, a road, and it said 2020 with the great lights, and it was to be the premier lodge in Maryland. That's it. And to say, like the Grand Master said, right, it's not put people into masonry, but masonry into people, right? What I'm the most proud of, right, is not the fact that, okay, so we instituted programs, we started being very disciplined with some people want to call it traditional observance, right? And then seeing that atmosphere change, coming in, everybody's happy, and then everybody's ready to go. And when it's masonry time. And then when it's fellowship, we fellowship hard. And then getting to meet and become brothers outside of the lodge, right? And then they step up, and you got entered apprentices stepping up, and they got a voice, right? Because that's something that was important. Like, everybody contributes, right? And it doesn't matter. You have a good idea, then let's go. And I think that's a sign of a good leader, right? I don't know everything.
It's one of the things I appreciate about you. You're a very humble guy. The first time I met you, We had relocated to DC, my wife and I was visiting lodges, and Odenton is it's closer to the Baltimore airport for me. Honestly, I figured out, oh wow, I'm practically a BWI from where I live in the DC area. But I knew when I went to visit your lodge that there was something special there, that there was some transformation that was happening, as you're describing. There was discovery of why we're here and putting meaning and value into it. And as I said, you're a humble guy, and it was over the fall of 2021, the news came out that your lodge had been recognized as one of the lodges of the year. Now, that's not something that is a system that's in place in New York State. So for brothers that hear this, what does that mean, and what did it mean to you, even though it was just, one time to get this award, but the years of work and dedication that went into it?
The interesting part is that I didn't even know, right? So I'm there doing our thing, and it was probably towards the end of the year, right? Like probably summer, end of summer. And my secretary says, Luis, we've done a lot. I think we could be in the running to get what we call the Grandmaster's Award, right? And there's the Grandmaster's program, and there's a certain criteria you have to meet. There's like 12 mandatory, if I remember, and like you got to have another 12 or 14 electives, we'll call it, right? Things that you should do, right? And we got it, and they give you this interesting little plaque. Hold on. So they give this plaque, and then they came out and said that they present the master with a certificate. I'll show you, Brother RC, just so that you kind of get an idea. The certificate is actually that Odenton is Lodge of the Year for Maryland, right? But my first words to the most worshipful Grand Master was, why is my name on that? Like, it needs to be addressed to the brothers and officers and brothers of the lodge, right? And I'll never forget, he looked at me, he's like, shaking his hand, like, man, you really are like different, right? So if you go to Odenton, you will find a framed certificate of Lodge of the Year, right? And you'll have a plaque, and it's addressed to the officers and brothers, and present it to them, right? Because they did all the work, right? Like, yeah, we put the motivation and we set the plan, but it's really a team effort, man. We're a family, and that's the atmosphere that we built now at our lodge. And I think that's what's made us successful, to be quite honest. But I think for anybody that wants to be master, man, it has to come. You have to do it for the right reasons. And for me, that's, you got to have a serving heart, right? Like, your attitude is you are a servant. What can you contribute to the lodge, right? You got to empower your people and make it better, take it to the future. But all in all, man, I can't complain. I think I had an excellent line, excellent support. And I just hope I did right by them. I always tell them that. But I hope I did right by them. Tomorrow I might get a little emotional. It's probably the dust. But I don't think I'm even going to give a speech. I'm just going to tell them, hey, if you guys don't know how I feel about you and Masonry, then I don't know where you've been. Go listen to Brother RC and the Craftsman Online. You'll get it.
Well, this has been the Craftsman Online podcast. I told you, he brings enough personality for the both of us. Worshipful Brother Luis Gonzalez, thank you so much, not only for coming on the podcast, but you really... I'm thinking there's a lot of brothers like me who are looking towards the East, and you gave some great advice. A reminder that new episodes of our podcast are available for download every Monday morning. Until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.